Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Glad you're here. Happy Tuesday, or whatever day. I still don't know any days. In Dante's Divine Comedy, there's a line, he says, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. That's inscribed on the entrance to hell. I don't want that to be the theme of this show. Welcome to the Mike Slater Show. Abandon hope, all ye who watch. That's not. So we're trying to find the right balance between reality and hope. Right? Here are some things that could happen if the virus and/or society takes a turn for the worst. And here's also some encouraging and inspiring moments that are happening in the midst of it, right? So we're trying to share all of that with whatever the heck this whole virus thing is. For instance, let me share this story here. I think this is a good microcosm for what we're talking about. This is from a ER doctor in New York. He says, so today in the middle of all the madness, there's a 100-year-old Hasidic lady with COVID pneumonia, and I was desperate to send her home so she wouldn't die in the hospital. But she dropped her blood pressure and we had to keep her. And then for an hour, her son kept calling me to find out how she was, and I finally told him, look, she's 100 years old with pneumonia in both lungs. She's not good. She's not gonna do well. And then he wanted to talk to her. And I said, you can't, I'm too busy. And he called back 10 minutes later and I said, listen, sir, your mother's not conscious anymore. And he said, that's okay, it's very important that I do a prayer for her. Could you hold the speaker to her ear? I had 10 other pressing things to do, but I stopped what I was doing out of respect for this 100-year-old woman, and I put the cell on speakerphone and told him to talk. He started the prayer of the dead, and he began to cry and could barely get the words out. And I saw she had numbers tattooed on her arm. He was crying for his mother and praying the Shema, the verses of unity, and it woke up some emotion in me that I had forgotten about. Time slowed down, and I felt restored to myself. When he was done, he thanked me and blessed me, and I said thank you to him. And my favorite part of that story is the time slowed down as things are so just flying, so fast and out of control. That story to me, that story's so real, right? It's got overwhelmed doctor, like rush, trying to save lives. You have dying woman, mourning son, and the doctor out in the midst of it snapped out of his hurry by a Holocaust survivor's last few minutes of life. And he's thrown into the moment. Time slows. That, to me, that's a beautiful and tragic story all at once. And I think that's a good metaphor for what I want to try to do as we move forward here. So C.S. Lewis, one of his best books, Screwtape Letters, you have to read it. You have this demon, his name's Screwtape, and he's giving advice to his nephew Wormwood, and Wormwood's in charge of a guy and trying to prevent him from becoming a Christian and then prevent him from living a Christian life. So all the advice he gives is backwards, right? So Screwtape, this demon, he's telling Wormwood to make sure that this man's mind always runs wild. So Screwtape said, and C.S. Lewis wrote, Screwtape said, we want him to be in maximum uncertainty. So first, let's stop there. Are you in maximum uncertainty? Right? I am in maximum uncertainty. I have no idea what's happening or what's going on next. I read something just like a minute ago, and it's like, well, you get the disease, and it could be anywhere from 5 to 14 days before you get it, and then another 5 to 14 days before you need to be hospitalized, and now maybe another 5 to 14 days after symptoms go away where you can still spread it to the people. It's like, what's going on? No one knows. We are in maximum uncertainty now. It's a fact. So Screwtape says that so that his mind will be filled with contradictory pictures of the future, every one of them which arouses fear. Have you stayed awake at night over this? Have you lost sleep in the last 3 weeks because of COVID? I think everyone has. Is that safe to say? Like, I'm a pretty deep sleeper. I got a 5-week-old. Doesn't wake me up. My wife isn't happy about that, but he doesn't wake me up ever. Right? I'm a pretty deep sleeper, but I've lost some sleep, not out of fear, but for me, it's like, I gotta know the latest all the time. So like I'll wake up at 2:00 and I roll over on Twitter and I'm like looking, I just can't stop. I need to know everything that's happening right now. And I don't know if that's super healthy, but it's amazing how quickly your mind can go to worst case scenario all the time, especially at night. So you don't want to do that. That's not healthy, not good. But you also can't be naive. You can't live not paying attention to anything that's going on. It's not healthy. It's not safe for your family. So this is Gary Selby. He wrote this on CT Today. He said, Lewis would say that what we need to do in this situation is to accept with patience the tribulation. So this is C.S. Lewis. He said, this is a quote from C.S. Lewis. Accept with patience the tribulation. Tribulation is a great word. It's a cause of great trouble or suffering, which has actually been dealt to us, the present anxiety and suspense, end quote, C.S. Lewis. For him, the anxiety we feel about our future is our present cross. And the Christian challenge is to take it up, like Jesus took up his cross. We should acknowledge our fear. Oh, that's so good, acknowledging it, not ignoring it, not being consumed by it, but acknowledge it. Ask God for help, and then pray as Christ taught us that thy will be done. And when we do that, amazing things begin to happen. The power that fear holds over us, if not eliminated, is at least diminished, and we find the strength to carry on. So there's this line between not being obsessed over and like not being filled with fear, but also acknowledging the present reality, which has some difficult aspects to it. Dr. David Jeremiah, he's a pastor out here in San Diego, Shadow Mountain Church. He's actually the most listened to person on the radio in the world, which is wild. They shoot him all over the world. Anyway, he had an awesome sermon on Sunday, and I encourage you to listen to it. But it was all about worrying, and don't worry, ever. It's right there, Matthew 6. Jesus says, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life. And Dr. Jeremiah, again, there's like nuance here. That's the name of the game during this season of life. It's all about nuance. Like you don't want to worry, but that doesn't mean you forego planning, right? So you got to be prudent, you be wise. You don't live recklessly, right? You don't go walking around asking people to sneeze in your face because you don't think you're ever going to get sick because you've manifested health or some such prosperity gospel nonsense, right? So it's not about that. You got to be smart, be wise, be prudent. It doesn't say don't be concerned about things. You want to be concerned about things that are going on, but you just don't want to worry. Those are different. Worrying is inconsistent. Worrying is irrational. Worrying is ineffective. Doesn't make you taller. Won't make you live longer. Won't make you healthier, that's for sure. Worrying doesn't make you smarter. Doesn't make you richer. You can't worry your way to anything. You can be thoughtful about it. You can pray. You can plan. You can prepare, all wise. But worrying won't give you jack. All you're going to do is lose sleep. You'll be less healthy. Compromise your immune system, be a less present mom or dad, husband or wife, or doctor at a time when people really, really need you to be present and healthy the most. So stop worrying. Now listen, I understand that in the history of people saying, stop worrying, that's never ever actually gotten someone to stop worrying. Right? It's sort of like, hey, relax, has never actually caused anyone to relax ever. Same thing here, just stop worrying. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, didn't know that. Another thing he said, worrying is illogical. So worrying is inconsistent, irrational, ineffective, illogical, and irresponsible. My wife's a worrier. She instantly goes, worst case scenario. And her biblical reminder, is to take every thought captive. I love that line so much. Take every thought captive. Don't let these things just take control of your imagination and keep you from living in the moment and keep you living in fear, right? Bring it back to reality. Take that thought captive. Bring it back to reality, what's in front of you, and make the best decision you can in the moment. And then take that and be grateful for whatever else is going on. That can also nullify the effects. So heard the story, I think we told this the other day, of someone who went to a grocery store and it was like crazy. It was right in the beginning of the whole panic buying whole thing. And the guy talked to the manager, and the manager said, listen, I've never seen anything like this in 45 years of working in the grocery business. And that guy thought, like most people would look at that as a negative, like, wow, like 45 years, this is the worst ever, blah, blah. But hear that, and he thought, geez, this is great. Nothing like this has ever happened in 45 years. I've lived 45 years and we've never had sort of like a panic buying like this. Like, that's pretty amazing. We go about our lives without really any disruption to our routines without any travel disruptions. Maybe a flight might get delayed because of some weather condition or something like that. But once every 45 years, that's pretty good if you have proper perspective. Now, I don't want to dismiss, people going through terrible economic times for that. I'm not dismissing that. But if that's not you, let's do what we can to help those who are in especially tough times. That's another aspect of gratitude as well. But anyway, here's my conclusion with worrying. Practical advice, it's super helpful. Whether you're a Christian or not, doesn't matter. You take your worry, whatever's keeping you up at night, and you write it down. Now, half of everyone listening right now just dismissed that for some reason. There's something weird, like people don't want to write things down. I don't know why. I promise you, there is something magical about writing it down, getting it out of your head and putting it on a piece of paper. So write it down. Write down your worry. Literally say, I am worried that. Boom, write it out. Most of the time, the worry will go away right there. It's unbelievable. But even if it doesn't, you look at it and say, okay, is this true? What are the chances? What are the real chances of this happening? You can pray about it, and then you can do something about it. You can act on it. So you can make a change in your life or whatever else can be done. But then you've gone from worrying to action, and that's where good things are finally going to start to possibly happen. Nothing good ever comes from worrying. If worrying were medicine, we'd have this thing cured 1,000 times over, right? But you never hear any leader, like the president's not like, hey, everyone, listen, we need more masks, more ventilators, and way more worry. If everyone could just worry 10 times more than you're worrying right now, then I really think we can beat this thing. Not doing anything. Now, you may be saying, Slater, listen, I worry all the time. You're wrong, Slater. I worry all the time, and it works because 99% of the time, what I've worried about doesn't happen. So worrying is good. It actually solves my problems. No, it doesn't. You're miscalculating your success rate. Because if you worry about something and it doesn't happen, you've wasted your time and your energy worrying about it. And if you worry about something and it does happen, now you've worried about the same thing twice. It's not very efficient. I know all easier said than done, but if you really want to stop worrying, you'll write down your worries on a piece of paper. If you don't do that, then you don't really want to change, and that's fine. Do whatever you want. But if you really don't want to worry anymore, there's your answer. Now, again, to reiterate, worrying doesn't mean don't be prepared. Worrying doesn't mean, or don't worry doesn't mean don't plan and don't make smart decisions about the future. That's what I'm talking about. You put it down and then you can get into some action. You're like, I'm worried about the economy. Okay, good. Now what do I do about that? I'm worried about the stock market. Okay, what do I do about that? I'm worried about my retirement. Okay, now what do I do about that? You get to action. And then when you get to action, you call American Hartford Gold Group because now we can start solving some problems here. Nothing to worry about anymore. Now you can get to work. Right? We talked about the Fed pumping $4 trillion. What is that? $2 trillion stimulus packages? And that's just the first round. Who knows what they're going to do again? The good news is the Fed can't print gold. There's only so much of it. There's not a lot of it. It's called a precious metal for a reason. It's a safe haven for your retirement, always. And it's a safe haven for now. like 2 weeks from now, it's a safe haven. But you need to call them now so you can get it ASAP. American Hartford Gold Group, they're the trusted leader in gold and silver. They make it super easy to get started. The whole process is ridiculously easy. They have a family-owned, A+ rating, Better Business Bureau, top-rated, Trustpilot, the whole thing, right? So give them a call, ask, they'll give you a ton of different options. Ask them about Valcambi bars. This is one of many options, right? But they break off into little 1 gram gold pieces, which would be really good for trading and bartering if you're concerned about that. But they have a lot of inventory still available right now. So give them a call, mention the first, and you get a free silver coin. So the number's at the bottom of the screen, 866-511-2758. And you can go to AmericanHartfordGold.com, but make sure you slash free coin in order to get the free coin. Hey, gold's going up. Do it now. Save more money. 866-511-2758. AmericanHartfordGold.com/free coin. More coming up. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to talk about numbers and modeling and sort of wrap our head around the models that were and the models that are to come. I think we played this Fauci clip yesterday, but we played it for a different reason. So let's play it again here. This is him on CNN this weekend.
Dr. Birx said yesterday, as you know, that she doesn't think any city will be spared from this virus. How many cases do you think the U.S. will reach? 1 million cases? 10 million cases? or do we not even have any idea?
You know, Jake, to be honest with you, we don't really have any firm idea. There are things called models. And when someone creates a model, they put in various assumptions. And the model is only as good and as accurate as your assumptions. And whenever the modelers come in, they give a worst case scenario and a best case scenario. Generally, the reality is somewhere in the middle. I've never seen a model of the diseases that I've dealt with, which the worst case scenario actually came out. They always overshoot. So when you use numbers like 1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million, that almost certainly is off the chart. Now, it's not impossible, but very, very unlikely. So it's difficult to present. I mean, looking at what we're seeing now, you know, I would say between 100 and 200,000 cases, but I don't want to be held to that because it's deaths. I mean, we're going to have millions of cases, but I just don't think that we really need to make a projection when it's such a moving target that you can so easily be wrong.
Most people are talking about that. They're talking about the number, the 100, 200,000. And I think maybe we played that the other day talking about that too. Dr. Bricks came out the next day, which would be yesterday, and said that 100, 200,000 deaths is if we do everything perfectly, right? But anyway, I'm not talking about that. I want to talk about the models, right? Models are only as good as what you put in them. Remember that Imperial College model in England that was talked about a lot, and this was the main reason that England decided to finally shut down for 3 weeks. Like, you can create a model to be whatever you want. Check out, this is the model that the Imperial College used. That's the equation. Now, I understand what that means. I clearly, like, I get it. I mean, it's lambda equals delta over k, like vertical line, h little or even littler k equals h1. I mean, I get it. I know it. But most people don't. You don't know what that means. But you can just change around any one of those little numbers or letters, Greek letters, and the number associated, like beta h is 0.2. Well, I don't even know what that is, but like, why not make it 0.25? And then the whole thing changes, right? So these models, and none of these take into account human behavior and change in human behavior. So be very, very careful with models. It's the best we got, but it's still, you got to take it with maybe a couple grains of salt. Not a single grain of salt, but a couple grains of salt. And then even numbers, we have no idea what numbers are, like death rate, for instance. We haven't talked about death rate in 2 weeks because it's a totally useless number. So to calculate the death rate, it's the number of people who died from COVID over the number of people who got COVID, right? So we'll never know the number of cases. We'll never know the number of people who have it. Without testing, we'll never know. So you can't calculate, just there, you can't even calculate that number. But we'll also never even know the number of deaths. First of all, we're hearing that China underestimated their number of deaths by outrageous amounts. It looks like in Wuhan, they said there's 2,000 people died, but it could be as high as 40,000 people. So it's somewhere between 2,000 and 40,000, and we'll never know. Right? Same thing with China, the Great Leap Forward. It's somewhere between 18 million and 45 million deaths caused by the Great Leap Forward. Like, that's a pretty big range here. But same thing, we'll never know the number of deaths from COVID in China. But not even just the Chicoms. We'll never even know it in Italy. So there's a town in Italy, in northern Italy, Nembro, Italy. 158 people were registered dead this year so far, 158. That's 123 more than average. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, it's probably 123 deaths from COVID. But they only registered 31 deaths from COVID. How can that be? Well, maybe doctors put heart attack, or kidney failure, or pneumonia, or any of the other things that technically wasn't COVID, but clearly caused by COVID. We also can't properly calculate the people who had a heart attack and then went to the hospital but couldn't get the treatment that they otherwise would have survived because of COVID patients. So does that count as dying from COVID, right? And it may even be more awkward here. So in Italy and France, if you die in a nursing home or at home, you're not listed in the death count from COVID. Truly. So in Italy and France, I'm sure other countries too, but we know in Italy and France, you have to die in a hospital to be classified as a COVID death. So we surely can't know the numerator, the number of cases. We're not even close to that. And we can't even accurately give you the denominator. We can't, wow, look at that math mistake I made. We can't know the denominator, number of cases, but we can't even know the numerator, the number of deaths. We can't even calculate that. So talking about modeling, we can't predict the future with models, but we can't even get accurate numbers for the past. Let me make one last point here, then we're going to get to our guest, David Harsanyi, who's awesome. I want to temper expectations because I keep going back. Sometimes I'm super hopeful, sometimes not. I go back and forth, like hourly, and I hear really good news about cures and treatments, which would be amazing, and different products like ventilators and stuff. That's awesome. But I just want to temper those expectations a little bit. I want to throw a total wet blanket on it, but it takes time to mass produce those things, right? So we talked the other day about this, yesterday with Dr. Victory, about an immunity test. There's two different types of tests. You have the test for the virus, and that says, do you have the virus now, yes or no? And then there's another test that tests antibodies, and that determines whether or not you've ever had the virus. So that's the test we actually need more of, right? Because that determines whether or not you've had it and can now safely go back to work, even though we don't know how long you have immunity. So there's actually a company in San Diego, it's called Genelite. And they say that they have a test and they can do, once they get going, they can do 5,000 tests a day. And I hear that and I think, well, that's awesome. So the 5,000 tests a day, and they're gonna prioritize it for healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers, that's great. 5,000 tests is 150,000 tests a month. The problem is there's 2.9 million nurses and 1.1 million doctors. How are you gonna mass produce that test? That, even if you could do it, we're like, hey, General Motors, you do it. Okay, but that's still gonna take time to do that. And all these technologies, we have to make millions of them before we start to see the benefits from it. So then you got the vaccine, that's a whole different thing, right? It could take us years to even come up with the vaccine. But then once we do, it's still time after that. So the flu vaccine, right? Once we identify the new strain of flu, best case scenario, 6 months to make, create, mass produce, send out, et cetera, all the vaccines for the flu every single year. That's something that we've been doing for 70 years. We know exactly how to do it. We have the infrastructure for it. We have the right proper testing. But we know exactly what to do with the flu vaccine. And it still takes 6 months just to make enough of that. So this would be a massive effort to make a vaccine for enough people, which is totally doable. But it requires that, right? It requires people like Mike Lindell, who spoke at the White House. He's the MyPillow guy. He spoke at the White House yesterday, made a bunch of lefties freak out because how dare he thank the president and quote scripture at the White House. But his company's 75% of their production is now making these masks. They're pumping out 50,000 a day. That's a massive effort. And fortunately, there's a lot of companies that are doing that. That's fantastic. But that's what it's going to take. We got to get out of this Amazon same-day delivery mindset where we're like, oh, we came up with a vaccine. Boom, done. Everyone's cured. No, came up with a vaccine. If that even happens, could be years. It's still going to take time after that even. So just think about that as we kind of think about how we're going to get back to whatever our new normal is even going to look like. I hope that wasn't too negative. I wanted that to be realistic, not a Debbie Downer. Coming up next, David Harsanyi. He'll pick up our spirits from the National Review. He's fantastic. One of my favorite writers. We'll talk with him next. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Slater Crusaders, I want to go right to one of my favorite writers. I turn to him almost daily to see what he's thinking and pontificating on. Author of First Freedom, A Ride Through America's Enduring History with the Gun from the Revolution to Today. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit because today is extra relevant. And obviously a senior writer at the National Review, it's David Harsanyi. David, how are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks for having me.
Good. I'm really glad you're here. So we'll start with this article you wrote I think this is your most recent. Yeah, you wrote this yesterday. So Paul Krugman and others been super critical of the president and just America's reaction to it. And of course, we've made mistakes and there's problems. But Paul Krugman said America's response to the coronavirus is the worst in the world. Is that true?
I don't think it's, I mean, I know it's not true, right? Because we know just off the bat that China's response is the worst in the world because they unleashed it on us and lied about it and covered up the extent of the problem to start with. Secondly, he's talking about the overall number of tests and a positive test and the number we know of how many people have coronavirus. Testing is not a bad thing, nor does it tell us that we're reacting badly. We're an open society. We're going to have these cases. We didn't close down our borders. We're a dynamic country in that way. So that's a terrible metric to measure how badly we're performing. The right measure, and it's not, no measure is perfect, is how many people are surviving? What is the casualty rate? How are we, dealing with it as far as hospital beds go in the curve and flattening the curve so that we don't overwhelm our hospitals? That's a better way to look at it. And obviously it's just this partisan thing he's trying to do with Donald Trump. Listen, I think Trump's initial reaction wasn't great, but I think we've done pretty well after that, and he's done pretty well. You can't be on forefoot all the time waiting for every disaster that can happen. We will never be fully prepared for something like this, in my opinion.
Yeah. I like the Scott Adams judgment, which is I'm not going to judge the initial action, I'm going to judge correction. And I think that's fair and appropriate. How do you, when you look at Krugman and a lot of people like this, still in the midst of this, how do you explain their hackery? Right? Just in terms of just human behavior, they can't stop it. What's the deal with that?
I wish I could explain it. I mean, yesterday during the briefing, you saw, reporters still obsessed with what Trump said 3 weeks ago, just making him comment on it, just wasting our time. I don't know why they do that. I mean, I do. I mean, obviously there's some sort of inherent partisanship in it. They want to win the next election. They don't like that Trump's poll numbers have gone up. And those poll numbers might be because he's doing a good job. They might be because we're just rallying around the president during a time of crisis. I don't know what it is, and it doesn't really even matter that much. What does matter is that I think our political media is failing us because they're not asking questions, or how should I say, even when they're asking questions that matter, they're also asking questions that distort the coverage so that we're all obsessed about some, Trump was mean to this reporter or that reporter, and we talk about that all day. It's not helpful. It doesn't, it's not what reporters should be doing.
Yeah, it's you get a chance. These reporters, you get a chance to talk to Dr. Fauci, right? The top leader expert. And you ask him some hack question about World Health Organization in China or something whatever. It's why are you doing that? You have one chance and that's what you blow it on?
Well, and they were, it seemed to me they were trying to put a wedge between him and Trump. And, and a lot of people noted this. I thought about it myself. It's they're going to get this guy fired, because Trump's going to end up fired. That's going to be terrible for the country. So it just doesn't make sense to me. This is a national emergency. This is not, a Supreme Court confirmation hearing. It's not impeachment. People are going to die here. And to act in that way, I think, is incredibly irresponsible.
Yeah. Let's talk about talking about getting out of this and what the end game is. I think, and I want to know if you agree, I think this is going to be longer than we think it is, although who knows. Let me get your take on that first, right? And because I know you're a sage, you have your crystal ball, Miss Cleo, you know exactly how long this is going to last. But what's your kind of gut tell you if you were a betting man on how long you think we'd be in this weird lockdown mode?
I don't. I think one of the few strengths I have is knowing the things that I don't know, and I don't know that is right. I'm not an expert on anything virology or anything revolving around that at all. But I do have a pet peeve where people tell me, shut up, let's listen to the scientists or doctors. If we did that, our lives would be terrible. We cannot just listen to doctors. We take risks every day. People do it all the time when they get in a car or when they go on a plane or wherever they're doing, and there are some risks involved. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying, hey, everyone get out of your houses. It's fine. But I think that having the discussion, which involves economics, which involves risk, which involves just human interaction. People need human interaction. I mean, I think there has to be sort of a glide path out of this. We should start talking about it. I think when Trump said Easter, that was not going to happen. I think I've heard it as aspirational when he said it.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe I just speak Trump. I don't know. Whatever it is. I think that giving people some hope and giving them some light at the end of the tunnel sort of stuff, I think it's helpful. People can't be cooped up in their houses forever. Like Virginia governor, his order goes till June 10th. It just seems too long for me. You do 2 weeks at a time, you reassess, you move forward. That seems the right way to do this. But, yes, the answer to your question is yes, I think it's okay to talk about it. We need to know. We are going to have to get out of our houses at some point, right? So
let's talk about that balance and the experts, right? So when I first started talking about this maybe 3 weeks ago on my radio show, I was pretty like, oh, this is a big deal. And I think a lot of audience was upset. And I think the reason why is because most of the time, almost every day on my radio show, I feel like I'm debunking experts or debunking the politicians or whoever we're supposed to listen to, and they're wrong about this and that and all these other. And people tuned in and they expected me to also debunk the epidemiologists. And I was like, oh no, I think they may be right on this one. Whatever. So how do we, but now here we are and a lot of these guys are still wrong and either way over exaggerated or whatever, right? So how do we balance trusting experts and also questioning them at the same time? What's the right posture with that?
Well, I think part of that is that we've expanded what an expert is, right? You have a lot of social science, which is mostly garbage, right? And telling us, conservatives are meaner than other people or whatever it is. So you're debunking these people constantly. And when you finally have some real hard science going on and people telling you something, a lot of consumers of news immediately have a reaction to the experts because typically they're telling them the world's going to end in 12 years or some sort of predictive science that they couldn't possibly know. So that's probably part of why your audience was, pushing back against that. But I think another part of it is, and I'll put myself into this category, I'm pretty skeptical of people who tell me big tragedies are coming. We've had a lot of these things break out and they've never really, people have died, but it's never been this big, right? It's never been a pandemic like this for us. So I think I was skeptical because there's a lot of melodrama out there with politicians always telling you the world is about to end. It's another thing. I think you have people calling everything a crisis, the climate crisis, this crisis, the inequality crisis. And young people are probably like, it's never really a crisis, right? So this is probably not going to be a crisis. Well, they're wrong. I think it is a crisis.
Yeah. Yep, no, that's definitely boy who cries wolf there. So back to how this thing ends. Like, do you have any vision for what potentially going back to normal life will look like?
I think sometimes when we think about the trajectory of something like this, we don't include in our mind, at least, or maybe reporters don't, or maybe I don't, what the things that change the trajectory in the sense of science, right? Like tomorrow, maybe there's a therapeutic way where we make this thing almost, or far less dangerous than it is, or that the vaccine, or that there's something we can't even account for that's going to pop up. I think we're industrious people and we're going to come up with ideas to help with this. It's a very fast moving situation, so we haven't been able to do that, but we always do. I was looking at a list of diseases that were around when my grandparents were alive, and the things that could kill you. And the world was a minefield of polio and just a million other kind of diseases and viruses and things like that could kill you. So I think we dealt with those and we'll deal with this. It's probably never going to be perfectly safe to go out, and never is. But I imagine that it's going to be sort of the scientific and technological advances that are going to help us most. Because obviously this thing just doesn't disappear. Maybe it mutates. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. But it's obviously something we have to deal with for the long term. So I don't have an answer to your question.
No, that's as good as I could ask. Is there any, the government's grown a lot here. Not only, $4 trillion of Fed pumping money and then $2 trillion stimulus package, et cetera, but a lot of emergency powers being used. Is there anything that you're concerned, shutting down churches and stuff like that? Is there anything that you're concerned that the government won't relinquish once this is over? And the government has grown now, and nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, as Friedman said.
Right. Well, That always worries me. And I think, it's a debate for later, but I think that there's going to be a lot of big fights over pulling some of this back, the way we deal with unemployment, et cetera. I know there's like I think the unemployment aspect of the stimulus bill, it sometimes will give people more money when they're unemployed than when they're employed, things like that. I think you have to worry about that being extended. Democrats, whenever you have some kind of stimulus like you had after 2007 and 8, that becomes a new baseline for them. Anything you want under that now is a cut, and they never let it, stop that. And don't get me wrong, Republicans spend like crazy too. It's not like they're responsible in this area, but I'm just saying typically, that's how the argument went. So I am worried about that. In the United States, because of the Supreme Court and independent judiciary and the things and federalism and things that we have, I'm not really concerned that de Blasio can stop me from going to church if I want. I doubt that that's going to happen, even though he says it. Yeah. I wouldn't be worried in some other countries where you don't have a strong constitution and judiciary, but here I'm not so much worried about, infringements on our rights as far as our constitutional rights go, but I do worry about what this looks like as far as spending goes and the things that government does. We keep spending like this and there's nothing bad happens, right? We spend, $6 trillion, whatever it is, Fed's lending it. I think a lot of people will internalize that that's okay, that there's nothing wrong, that we don't really even care about the debt anymore. And we almost don't anyway, right? But even, desensitizing us even more to that, I think that could be a problem, yeah.
Totally right. Now we're talking trillions, like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about any, who knows how things go, right? And things can fall in a million different ways. But are there any things that you're worried about, like with any sort of social breakdown in the next few weeks or months? Like if things kind of fall the wrong way a few times and we end up in a bad place socially. Do you see that happening at all?
It's, it's funny when every day is a roller coaster, or was. Like one day you read it, you're like, this is nothing, right? And then the next article you read, you're like, my God, we're really all gonna die very soon. So it's like hourly that my mood shifts, right? So being on Twitter, I'm like, yeah, society's probably gonna fall apart. We obviously hate each other and want to kill each other. But then I go out into the real world, well, not the last few days, but in general, or even if you go to the supermarket, whatever, it just seems very unlikely to me that there'll be a societal breakdown. I think that most people are law-abiding. I think that when you really go out into America, Americans act they don't act that way. Who knows? You have an entire police force goes down, God forbid, something like that. You might have rioting. I don't know. But right now, I don't feel that in the real world. And I hope that that's, won't be the case.
I agree with that as well. We got about 30 seconds. What do you wish people had more of in the next few weeks? So my answer would be grace. I think we kind of touched on it earlier. Like give the president a little grace here as we make different adjustments moving forward, whatever. What do you think people should have more of as we proceed?
It's a good question. Grace is a good one. I think that, even I noticed myself losing patience, with people, not just in my family, but online, being a little curt with people. I think that we need to give each other a little more room and not be obsessed. I think we need less partisanship right now. You can get the president in November if you want. You can talk about, own the libs later. I think it'd be great if it's sort of like, because we're wasting a lot of brain power and energy arguing over things that are irrelevant rather than things that matter. So I just wish that people would concentrate more on what matters. And maybe being in home with your family will help.
Yeah. David Arsani, one of my favorite writers, National Review, and his books First Freedom, A Ride Through America's Enduring History with The Gun from the Revolution Today. David, appreciate you, sir. Let's talk again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your time. Coming up next, we'll wrap up quickly with some economic news in light of all this. Coming up, True Story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I want to talk about social breakdown for a second. There's something I'm a little concerned about. It has to do with the economy, but it's a little twist on it. My concern is almost everyone, at writing articles about the economy, and everyone at the Federal Reserve, and almost everyone in the media, and everyone in positions of influence right now talking about the economy and talking about being locked down for months and whatever. Almost all those people are on salary. So for me, I'm on salary. Sure, cancel April. It's fine, like go another month or two. Let's make sure we have it all cleared out. We're good to go. Like that's me. And we're fine. But if you're and these numbers change all the time and I don't even know what, but like if you're the 45% of Americans who don't have any money in savings, or the 70% of Americans who have less than $1,000, I don't know how they calculate that stuff and it changes all the time, but whatever. There's a big percentage of our country that doesn't have any money in savings. You can't just be like, April, whatever, let's go till June. And then, so here's that. Most of my friends are either in the military or government jobs, a bunch of moochers, or salary, or in a business, they own a business or they're running a business that is doing really good during this time. Right? I don't have any really close friends who are out of work right now. So my perspective is way off on this. I went to the grocery store the other day. We stocked up on food, stocked up good, healthy produce. We got plenty of frozen food to stash away. Like we are golden. But I think I'm in a pretty small percentage of people right now, and that's going to bias anything I talk about with this, right? Because I'm definitely going to have more of an attitude of like, well, let's all just stay home and be close with your friends and with your family, and get those projects done around the house that you've been meaning to do. Meanwhile, some people don't have any money, and that disparity of not even, it's like that attitude disparity could cause a lot of bitterness and resentment and anger and frustration, more so than even the lack of food, maybe. So check this video out. Someone took this overhead shot of this line of cars. This is a line to a food bank in Pittsburgh, outside Pittsburgh, mile long, two cars wide. I got a ton of questions about that. First of all, how come we don't see that everywhere else? Maybe we do, just someone didn't take a drone shot. Maybe it is happening everywhere else. Those are just the people with cars. Where is that? Like, is that just maybe it's like a steel town and everyone's out of work? Is there no food in the town? Did the grocery stores get shut down? Like, I am very confused about that picture right there. But you start seeing more of that around the country, if that happens, and those people tune into the news, and everyone on the news is like, well, let's just hunker down a little bit longer and then we'll be okay. That's gonna cause a lot of problems. So Jesse wrote this tweet. He's been obviously very hard on the economy here and how this is crushing the economy and maybe not worth it. This guy wrote back, Ricardo Velasquez. He says, my company's one that's surging in business and we're doing fine. We're hiring. We're getting more candidates than we can handle. And the desperation I'm seeing in the interviewees is nothing like I've ever seen before. It's heartbreaking and terrifying, but this is what he said the next sentence. He said, the independently wealthy, the tenured professors, the teachers and bureaucrats still getting paid, the rich government-connected companies getting stimulus money, they have no idea what's happening. My local newspaper here, the San Diego Union Tribune, they did a really good article about business owners who are letting people go and how distraught they are about it. And it's totally genuine and very true and right. They talked to a guy who owns a bunch of parking lots, which if I had to get into a business, I'd get in the parking lot business, but we'll save it for another day. 5,000 employees had to, 95% drop in revenue, obviously, and they had to lay off 80% of the workforce. And he's distraught about it. They talked to a hotel owner who had to lay everyone off. Restaurant owners said, I'm not sleeping well. I'm in fear because I can't provide for my employees. I'm full of anxiety. One restaurant owner said, I've cried for 3 days. I wasn't prepared for how deeply saddened I'd be by not being able to provide for my employees. It's all good. I appreciate the newspaper talking to business owners, and I'm grateful for business owners sharing their story. But I haven't seen a lot of articles about people. So there's this growing disconnect between, hey, really enjoy these next couple months of #quarantine life. Take up a new hobby, get some stuff done around the house. It's really fun, isn't it? And half the country doesn't have food or money to pay for food. And if the media is talking about how much fun quarantine life is and half the country is struggling to eat, that's going to create a lot of tension and a lot of animosity and bitterness, which could boil over into something not good. Bloomberg wrote a piece the other day about southern Italy and how there's police officers now standing outside of grocery stores to prevent looting. One line was, officials worry the mafia may be preparing to step in. It's like, guys, pretty sure the mafia's already stepped in here. But like that's, there. Does that make sense? I'm not so much concerned about lack of food in grocery stores or supply lines anymore as much as like an empathy gap or a quarantine fund gap that could cause some problems moving forward. I don't know. Something to think about. We're out of time. We got to go. Have a great rest of your quarantine day with your family. See what I mean? Have a great rest of your day, though. Seriously, do the best we can. And we'll report back tomorrow. True story. Mike Slater. See you then.